Thank you, fellow Toastmasters. As Debbie has stated, and for those of you who are relatively new to Toastmasters, my family and I do raise chickens. They are adorable. They are a joy to own and overall a rewarding experience if you ignore the expensive, the mess, and the smell. At one point, a family member, very innocently and in passing, raised the idea of adding a goat to the mix. I won't say which family member it is, but to suffice it to say, the answer was a very immediate, very firm, very 2-1 no. But recently, I started re-entertaining the idea, if not just for if out of curiosity's sake, and did some research to find out the pros, cons, necessary means, and whether or not it would fall into the realm or a possibility, at least for us personally. Turns out, unsurprisingly, there is a lot of information, so I've tried to make it as general as possible and narrow it down. First, there are a lot of benefits to owning goats. Backyard livestock is commonly referred to when regular people, not farmers, own livestock such as chickens and goats, provide means to self-sustainability, among other things. Goats, like chickens, are smaller, easier, and more cost-effective to handle than, say, cows and horses, and require less space to thrive in. They provide food in the form of meat and milk, the latter being nutrition-dense, easier to digest, and can make other objects like soap. Certain breeds have coats that can be harvested into textiles. Goat dung is very compostable and great for plants. They eat weeds and invasive species, making for a cleaner property. Selling their meat, milk, wool, and offspring provides extra income, and raising goats provides a lot of educational value for both children and adults. Of course, unsurprisingly, there are a lot of drawbacks. Goats have very aggressive tendencies. They smell. They're susceptible to parasites and numerous diseases. They're loud, notorious escape artists. They'll practically eat anything, and I mean anything, but grass. It costs money to feed, house, and maintain medically. So what does raising goats mean, especially to first-time owners? There are a number of factors. That includes breeds, homing, fencing, breeding, diet, and healthcare. First, you want to consider if you have enough space to raise a goat. Goats traditionally need about 200 square feet of pasture per goat. Our backyard is roughly a quarter acre. So technically we have the space, but a lot of that space has been given up to sheds, chicken housing, vegetable gardens, etc. You also have to take into account that goats are social animals and you have to get them in pairs. Second, what do you want from your goats? Because this will help you decide which breeds to get. Different breeds have different traits. Some are kept for milks, some are kept for meat, some are kept for their coats, some are kept for pedigree breeding, and some are just kept as pets. Characteristics such as temperance and friendliness also vary in between breeds. The sites I visited very strongly recommend talking to goat experts in order to help narrow down your choices. Next, you want to decide on fencing and housing. Goats can jump impressively high depending on the type of breed and can barge their way out of weak fencing. Why they escape vary. They can be bored. They may not have enough browsing area, or because they just want a challenge. It's recommended that fencing be at least 4 to 5 feet tall, maybe higher depending on the breed. And fencing should also be made out of sterile materials like cattle panel or heavy woven wire fencing. Some experts recommend electric fence, not the kind that'll kill you, God forbid, but just enough to deliver an unpleasant sensation that discourages climbing and headbutting. You also want to have adequate shelter for your goats. Actually, it doesn't take much to have basic shelter. Unlike other barnyard animals like cows and chickens and horses, goats do not like getting wet. It's best to have a solid, well-ventilated structure that protects them from the elements. It doesn't have to be completely enclosed. It should not be heated because that can prevent them from growing good coats during the winter. It should also be structured based on factors like local climate, proximity to grazing areas, and the size of your herd, as well as any additional items you want to keep inside the enclosure. Almost anything can serve as housing: a reconverted barn, a three-sided shed, or a mobile covered structures like tractors for distant browsing. Other factors for size include space for feed and water, equipment, and possibly additional optional pens. Like other barnyard animals, goats can't survive on browsing alone. They don't graze, they browse for certain greens. They need access to supplemental feed, nutritional hay, minerals, grain, and continual fresh water. Feed should be in an area that will keep it dry and free of mold, and preferably off the ground so it doesn't get contaminated. While goats will eat almost any kind of plant, which is why good fencing makes for good goats. um, they do not actually eat grass unless there's nothing available or unless the grass is young and tender. A goat owner should also be prepared to manage the flock's medical needs. Goats need to be dewormed. They need their hooves trimmed. They need their hair clipped. They need to be assisted with births, also called kidding, and they need to be tested annually and constantly monitored for certain diseases that can affect the whole flock. Certain medical supplies and over-the-counter meds should be kept on hand, and they can be found at any feed store, including Tractor Supply. It's also important to thoroughly research how to manage your flock based on what you want from them. If you have a dairy flock, for instance, you need to know how to milk. You need to know how often to milk, depending on the breed. If you want to sell, you also have to train your does to cooperate during the process, which is not always an easy feat. If you want to sell the milk, you need to know how about pasteurization and processing. If you want to breed them, you have to know how to manage breeding. You might even want to get your breeds registered, because registered breeders and pedigrees are more valuable. In the conclusion, it's probably safe to say that goat raising is too high maintenance and not worth the investment, at least not for us, since we have neither the time nor the facilities nor the desire to annoy the neighbors further than we already have. But if we do change our minds, at least we have some idea of what to deal with. Thank you.